Welcome to Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. You are going to hear the stories from the eclectic life of a guy who is a professional counselor, a family man, a SWAT team chaplain, outdoor enthusiast, a guy involved with ropes, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, a chaotic Jedi, and who is a recipient of an honorary doctorate from the University of Adversity. Using these stories, we take the facts lead to concepts, and from the concepts, we make a variety of life applications. Just a caveat about the facts. Most of the time, we will tell you the facts just the way it happened, but once in a while, we'll give you the facts the way other people remember how it happened, and that usually includes a tablespoon of embellishment. No harm is meant, just good, clean fun for educational purposes. Please subscribe and share this with your friends or your enemies. It might help them to be better people if they listen. As always, we thank you for keeping up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Introducing the Bible degree with digital ministry. Paul used the marketplace and the synagogue to reach an expanded audience. We have access to the internet and social media. I once heard it said that when McDonald's introduced the drive-through window, they did not change the Big Mac, only how it was delivered. Faulkner University is now offering a new digital ministry track for their Bible degree. Faulkner's degree provides training in understanding and teaching the gospel, alongside training that will allow students to create quality digital content. Opportunities for evangelism in the digital spaces is unlimited, and this is innovative ministry education for our contemporary culture. One of the instructors is a 2-time Emmy-winning former ESPN designer. Members of the Church of Christ could be eligible for the full tuition Jack Zorn Scholarship in order to pursue this special area of study. For more information, contact admissions at faulkner.edu. That is admissions at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a digital partner with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. There's 36 seconds of video. The video was recorded November the 14th at 5:29 p.m., and it shows a small boy crawling on his belly with a flashlight, and he's crawling through brush, underbrush, briars, and scrub pine that most people wouldn't go through to get a $100 bill on the other side. You clearly hear his little voice. I'm going to crawl under this tree. And I ask on the video, do you see more blood? He's grunting and crawling. Oh yeah. He crawls a little further. I see more blood. There's a tail. The deer. I found a deer. Now he's up and he's running. It's a big one. It's a buck. Man, I hope that's not the only buck my grandson ever shoots. I hope that's not the only deer he ever gets to blood trail, but no matter how many more, and even if they are much, much bigger, and it would be hard not to kill a bigger one, they will never be his first buck. We'd sat in an overly warm afternoon in an overly warm shooting house on youth weekend with wasp approaching Egyptian plague level numbers. We had brought drinks and snacks, our Charlotte's Web homework, so he could keep Mrs. Johnson happy because she'd allowed him to skip school. He had an iPad, and the iPad contained a video game for football and baseball. I had a rangefinder and a 350 Legend. The 350 Legend is a rifle cartridge developed by Winchester in 2019 to meet the requirements that permit hunting with straight wall cartridges. It was designed to be a low recoil, versatile, effective option for hunters in states where the law doesn't permit the using of high-powered rifles. Now, essentially, this is an engineer's end and around the gun cairns, which previously only allowed hunters to use slug guns or black powder. But the 350 Legend is an ideal choice for a youth hunter. Essentially, you're shooting a 357 bullet off of a rifle cartridge. This little first buck came at the end of a long process. He and I began to shoot a BB gun when he was about 4 years old. The very same BB gun that my brother Gerald bought for Lonnie Beth when she was about the same age. After working through some cross dominance with his right eye, we moved to a peep sight and eventually stepped up to a red dot mounted on a little Cricket 22 rifle and eventually the one mounted on my AR. He had sat in a blind with me when he was 4, just me and him and my bow, and we'd seen deer walk past us. He'd sat in my fallen tree hide on the edge of a pasture where I took a doe and right at dark and introduced him to following a blood trail and the process of field dressing a deer. And the first deer he ever killed was with a 5.56, the AR that I built and was shooting 5.56 rounds out of it. We'd been sitting in a brush pile on the ground using natural cover. See, I wanted him to hunt deer from the ground in the woods using natural cover. I wanted him to learn to use the woods, the deadfalls, the treetops, the topography in order to hide. You see, if you have a close encounter with a deer in these conditions, you only have a deer walk by you in those conditions if you have woodscraft. If you know how to manage your scent, play the wind, and you can control your movement or lack thereof. Today, the day of the buck, we were just shooting. We were going to call it hunting, but we were in a concealed hunting blind, a wooden structure built on stilts that many people call a shooting house or a box blind. From our vantage point in the middle of an open field surrounded on 4 sides by different types of woods, we had a 360-degree possible approach and a 360-degree field of fire. The potential for a shot past 100 yards or further meant that I needed a different gun for him, and so I had borrowed the 350 Legend from the legend, Daryl Pickle. I'm not teaching him to hunt today. I'm letting him shoot, and I'm hoping today he learns something about choices. I'm hoping today works out so that he learns the difference and the importance of 2 words, now and most. 9-year-old boys have the attention span of a weather vane. iPads, homework, extra cords so he can learn to tie knots with me, snacks, all these things are to keep him busy, to keep the noise down, minimize movement, and minimize boredom. Exactly 1 hour and 40 minutes passed before the first deer appeared, and they walked out at 191 yards. They needed to be at least at 175. And deer don't have clocks. They don't have schedules. Similar to her famous comment about hornets, I was complaining about bow hunting and telling my wife, do you realize how long it takes for a deer to take a single step, the only step he needs to take to be in range for my bow? And my wife simply remarked, what else does a deer have to do? And she's right, because as prey animals, they literally have the rest of their lives to take their next step. So they usually have no sense of urgency. They usually don't care about moving into range or outside of cover. And they can cube around at the far end of a green field with the apparent randomness of my wife looking at paint samples or light fixtures at Lowe's. We sat in the stand watching the deer, and one doe kept looking at us. 191 yards away, 6 deer in a cluster, and she popped that head up and looking straight at us. Gunner wasn't wearing a mask or a face veil, and I thought maybe she could see his face as he stood behind the rifle, and as he moved around a little bit, I kept urging him to be still and just wait. I was using my range finder and ranging them, and they were not moving, and then Gunner, as he turned around, said, hey, there's another deer right there. I turned my head, and sure enough, there was a small spike grazing behind us, and he was ignoring the world. The doe on the other end was not looking at us, she was looking at him. Turns out that right behind the spike came 2 does, and one was a big, mature, shootable doe. And so we eased around as quietly as we could, and we took our first shot at 3:50 in the afternoon with a 350 Legend. The deer folded up like a church check. Gunner stood up and flexed like the high school athletes that play for his dad and said, let's go. We sent texts to Mom and Dad and Grammy Jacks. The text simply said, backstrap on the ground. After he finally calmed down, he looked at me and said, let's go. I said, it's probably a little early. She's not going to be that hard to find. She's not going anywhere. If we choose to wait, there's a good chance with the way the deer move, we might see a buck. I know, but let's go get her. Hey, let's wait till dark. And normally I don't have these debates with him. Normally I have a rule. And the rule is you are hunting or taking your kids hunting, but you're not doing both. He and I have stayed in the woods for 3 hours, and we've stayed in the woods for 30 minutes. If he doesn't want to be out there, we don't stay. If he doesn't want to sit still, we don't. We spent one afternoon waiting in a creek with our guns above our heads like army soldiers and shooting acorns. Once we left right at magic hour, magic hour means that it was the time of the day when it's dark and deer start to move. Deer are crepuscular animals, meaning that they move at twilight. And so by twilight, it means it was starting to get dark, and the woods get dark real fast. And at that age, he was a little uncomfortable with the dark and the prospect of walking out in it, and he wanted to leave early, and we did. But today we chose to stay till dark. And sure enough, just before dark, the little 6-point walked out. This would be the 13th deer we saw between 3:40 and 4:50 in the afternoon. The shot he took was about 75 yards, give or take, and the little buck ran into this underbrush. I told Gunner that we normally, once you shoot a deer, normally you wait 30 minutes, and that way we don't risk pushing him. But given what this deer ran into, given where he'd run, and what we're going to have to do to find it, we needed to get it on the ground and see if we could at least find blood in the daylight, and then we go into the underbrush after it fell dark. It was going to be a difficult track. And just after dark, we found the first blood. As we were walking on the edge of this area that the deer ran into, looking for the blood, Gunner said, honestly, Papa Jonesy, I may have missed. I knew he didn't miss. I saw the impact on the deer. I saw the buck react, and I knew it was a solid hit. But I asked him, what makes you think you missed? Well, I saw the dirt fly up. I stopped and looked at this little boy. Are you telling me you stayed in that scope long enough to see the dirt kick up? Innocently, he said yes. He didn't know what he'd admitted to. He didn't know what that meant. But what it means is he was doing follow-through. He looked at this deer through the scope. He controlled his breathing and pulled the trigger and stayed in the scope in spite of the recoil and watched his shot go all the way through the deer and hit the ground on the other side. I guess as an athlete, he instinctively knows how to follow through, but that makes him a really fine little shooter for a 9-year-old. So now it's time to enter this thick bramble. I told him, I said, now the blood's not going to be on the ground like it usually is, but it's going to be up on the vines and in the stalks and on the briars. So don't just look down, but look down and out. Man, those 9-year-old eyes are sharp. They don't miss anything. And he saw things that I might have missed. He'd grown quite a bit since the first time we'd been, and he was afraid of the dark. He was crawling fearlessly through this nearly impenetrable brush. And sometimes in his haste, he'd anticipate if there's a blood drop here, there's got to be one there. And he'd go forward and go in the wrong direction. And then he'd come back and say, okay, where was the last blood? And he would ask that like a seasoned tracker. We'd gone a ways into the tangles, and I saw that the blood trail, the panic run of a wounded deer, was going to intersect a real trail. And typically once they hit a real trail, they follow that trail, and that's where you find them. So I started recording. I didn't know the deer was 36 seconds away. I admit I get that little video out, and I've watched it once a week since it happened. I watch Gage's popcorn video once a month, and I watch Rowan's little video where she says, I don't know, at least once a month. This video will become the legend of this fall and the legend of his first buck. Now, there's something I didn't video. You see, we found the little deer, and I took a picture, and we sat on the ground in the middle of these briars and scrub pines, and a little small boy holding the antlers of his first buck. And I just simply asked him a question sitting there in the dark. Are you glad you waited? I didn't ask, aren't you glad you waited? But I just asked, are you glad you waited? I'm not sure if it'll hit him. It may be just the gratification of having found the deer. but I think I saw a seed fall into fertile ground. If not in his consciousness, maybe in his heart. Are you glad you waited? It's not always wrong not to wait. If we'd harvested our dough, we get out of the woods and the field and our home before dark and getting to eat an El Coyote with pickle, there'd be nothing wrong with that. It would not have been a bad ending, but it would not have been the ending we had. Sure, we could have waited and nothing else had happened, and it would have not have changed a single thing. We wouldn't have lost the dough. We wouldn't have had any trouble finding her, and we would have had a good hunt. And we would not have not had a good hunt. But because we waited, because we didn't do what we felt like we wanted to do right now, we got the thing that we've been looking for the most, and that was a little buck. We got something he'll never, ever get again. His first buck. And not knowing, he made a choice between now and most. What do you want now? Let's go get my deer. What do you want most? I'd like a buck to walk out. Well, you can't do both. There are times when what you want most has to be acted on now. But in most cases, you'll be glad you waited. Not you'll be glad you delayed, not you'll be glad you procrastinated, not you'll be glad that you didn't do diligence, but intentionally not acting. Acting with the intention to choose what you want that is not there yet, not yet here, not promised, not implied, not guaranteed, but is only possible if you wait. See, what do you want now and what do you want most? One is a question of emotion. What do you want now? It's emotion devoid of intellect, and it's just about using our emotions as instruction rather than information. And the other is about emotion, what I desire, what I want, and it's combined with intellect. Now, sitting there in the dark, holding on to this deer, and me asking him that question may not be the life lesson for him that I hope it is. I wrote that in his little Bible after he was baptized. We bought him a Bible. I haven't given to him yet, but I wrote in it, and I wrote, "Are you glad you waited?" You see, there'll be times when he's navigating adolescence, and he wants to quit. He wants to give in. He wants to give up. He wants to cheat or stop or go ahead even though they said not to. He'll want to lash out, act out, respond, throw hands, mouth off. Because you see, once you do those things, you cannot unsay, you cannot unsee, you cannot undo, you cannot unact, you cannot unrespond, and you cannot undo not waiting. I hope when he gets to those moments, he'll hear the voice of an old man sitting with him in the dark, surrounded by briars, thorns, and darkness. And I hope he'll remember the deep satisfaction, the thrill of a 9-year-old accomplishment. And I hope he'll, if he doesn't hear my voice, I hope he just hears the words, "Are you glad you waited?" I hope one day, looking at that little European skull mount on his wall, he'll ask himself the question with all the implications for all the days that follow. Now, he'll tell himself, "I would have been satisfied with just a doe. I would have felt successful." But I hope he can have the wisdom at that young age to look at the legend from that fall and realize there's certain things that can only happen if you wait. He won't have this perspective, and he may not ever have this conversation with me. But what would have happened if I hadn't waited on the financial assistance to stay in college? What would have happened in my life if I hadn't waited on Jackie? What would have happened if I had taken all those job offers and not decided just to try to build a life and minister for 40 plus years in the same community? What would have happened if I had burned out in one job and instead of waiting to have my license turn my ministry into ministry and consulting and just giving up on the whole thing. I hope he looks back at a simple lesson from a deer field. And I hope he asks the question, well, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't waited. I hope he asks the question, what could happen if I don't wait? But more importantly, I hope he has the wisdom from this little experience to ask himself, what could happen? What's possible if I just learn to wait? The mission of Heritage Christian University is simple. They aim to advance the churches of Christ by equipping servants through undergraduate and graduate programs. Heritage Christian University produces effective communicators of the gospel, focusing on evangelism and a commitment to Scripture. Heritage Christian University is accredited by the Association for Biblical Higher Education and offers the following degrees: Associate of Arts in Biblical Studies, Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Studies, Master of Arts, Master of Ministry, and Master of Divinity. Since 1968, Heritage Christian University, formerly International Bible College, has offered affordable degrees in biblical studies, allowing graduates to thrive in their ministries without the burden of loan debt after graduation. For more information about Heritage Christian University, visit www.hcu.edu. That's 3 W's and a dot. hcu.edu. Heritage Christian University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707. 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3 W's and a dot worldchristian.org, find the donate here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.